3,100 plus articles, 100 plus C-level interviews every year. One mission: to save healthcare through technology. Imagine a future where your smartwatch alerts your doctor before you even know you're sick. A world where seniors live safely at home longer. Employees get healthier, companies get richer, and diseases are tackled before they take roots. The future isn't science fiction, it's being built right now. Our guest today is a visionary who is not just predicting this transformation, he is helping lead it. With decades of experience, global insight, and a front row seat to health tech biggest breakthroughs, he is here to show us what's coming next and how founders ourselves could leverage some soft skills to present ourselves. Welcome to another episode of Founders Podcast. I'm your host, Ash, and this is a show where I interview proven founders and industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you build, launch, and grow your business. In this episode, I talk to Alfred, the founder of the 75% Solution. Alfred, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to have this opportunity.
Great. Do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires or motivates you would like to share with our audience?
For me, not so much a quote, but just a principle. I have always had been guided by the concept of leaving things better than I found them. I learned that in wilderness camping, but I found that transfers to just about everything in your personal and professional lives.
Indeed. And Alfred, you have written more than 3,000 articles. That blows my mind. It's like, I don't know how long it would have taken you. You have got quite a lot of wisdom. My dad used to say that I haven't got my hairs, white in the sun, something like that. But it's in different language, so I cannot translate it in English. Talk to us through your journey. How did you end up writing so much good stuff, helping others?
So, to begin with, I came out of before I started college. I was thinking I was going to go into science of some sort, marine biology. I worked in marine biology between high school and college. Along the route, I discovered that teachers didn't eat well, but they ate regularly compared to scientists who are always looking for grants and stuff. So I actually started off teaching middle school science. And that's where I began out of college. That led me on a journey, though. I became involved in technology. I wrote for PC Magazine for over 22 years. I was a contributing editor with them. After that, I became an expert in the display industry and had a good run with that. And then, as you mentioned about the health tech, when I was looking for what comes next, I thought that wearables was going to be the next big bang in technology. And so that was about 11, 12 years ago. A friend of mine was founding some websites and newsletters. I took on the role that I chose the one for the health and medical applications. And after a couple of years, he'd had enough fun with it. So I bought it from him and ran it for 9 years. And we had a good run and helped expose a lot of people to the kinds of things that health technology is going to be doing. And along the way, as you mentioned, I've had the great opportunity to meet with executives of all kinds of companies. And this goes back to the days at PC Magazine as well, ranging from the giants of Philips and Johnson and Johnson and IBM and Dell, all the big names, but then also the little companies, the startups. And I've been able to follow a lot of them, like NVIDIA. I remember when NVIDIA was just making graphics cards for CAD machines. And I've watched that company grow to, international proportions. The one common thread through all of these experiences, I like to call it my superpower. What I've built my career on is my ability to explain complex ideas to people in ways that they can put to immediate and practical use. So whether it was computers or displays or health tech, and now the work that I'm doing with startup founders to help them be more effective in how they present themselves, especially online. It, it's a common thread running through the whole thing.
Indeed. And this is what makes me quite interested into what you're doing right now. So I meet several founders on a daily basis. I talk to them on LinkedIn. I meet them once in a month in an event we host, in central London. I interview quite a lot of founders on the podcast. And one thing I come across, or a lot of people message me on different social media, is how to be in front of their potential customers, how to be in front of their potential investors, how to market. So you might have noticed it working with a lot of founders that founders are not that great marketers, right? They're focused on product, they're focused on the solution. They're more, like, oh, this is my product, this is my product could do. But they don't really understand how to go out and talk to people. For example, somebody like, I don't know, Bill Gates in that manner, right? He was a really good salesman. But you're helping them with this side or this element, this section of their founder's life. I want to know more about this 75% solution. What is the product or service is, and how do you help founders?
So let me start by saying I originally started focusing on helping I'm a keynote speaker, among other things. I started helping other speakers become better in virtual presentations. Mm-hmm. And that led to helping executives at companies. And through that, I realized, the people who need it most are the founders of startups. And the reason for that is they're meeting with their potential investors, their potential business partners, supply chains, their potential customers and clients. They're doing that online. The 75% solution, the 75% comes from a Gartner report where they predicted that 75% of all business meetings, that's both internal and external, 75% of all business meetings will happen online. And I imagine for you and me, that percentage might be even a bit higher.
A bit higher, yeah.
I like to point out that if I were to have to come to your studio to record this interview, it probably wouldn't happen. I'm not going to do a transatlantic flight for an hour conversation. So the situation is that we've made this online communication so convenient, but we haven't done the training. We haven't prepared people for it. For me, it goes back to the pandemic. That's where really all of this accelerated. And the pandemic taught us that we had Zoom, we had Skype until today. We had Skype, but these were programs that you could use on your computer. Your laptop has a camera, it has microphones, it has speakers. You don't need to be a technical audio-visual whiz in order to use it. You just open up your laptop and go. And that was the whole problem, because people were not as intentional about how they come across online as they were in person. I love to give the example. You have somebody who is just impressive in the boardroom, just commands everybody's attention. You put them on stage and they just, have the whole audience in the palm of their hand. You put them on a Zoom call and it looks like they've joined witness protection, right? And so the problem is that we were taught by the pandemic that you can just open up your laptop wherever you are, in your kitchen, in your hotel bedroom, out by the pool, doesn't matter how you're dressed, and start talking. And my point is, if 3 out of 4 of your meetings are going to be held online, And if they're important enough for you to give the time to hold those meetings, why wouldn't you want to make the best, take the best possible value that you can get out of that opportunity? Why wouldn't you want that to be the best experience possible? And it's, to me, it comes back to intentionality. All right. When you walk into a boardroom, when you walk on stage, you're intentional about how you appear, how you're going to look at people, how you're going to shake their hand, how you're going to present yourself. It's going to be, coherent with your personal and professional branding, all of that. But when you go with, a Zoom call or WebEx or whatever you happen to be doing it on, if you're not thinking about it, you end up with something like this, where you're not making eye contact, your head is giant. It just doesn't look professional. And I think that if people were intentional about it, they'd rather look like this.
Indeed. And I couldn't agree more with you, because so many meetings we have on a daily basis, and exactly what you have demonstrated just now on our recording, it happens in real life. So this is a real problem, so I wanna touch more on this later on, but I want to more learn about you. Like, I'm eager to learn more about you as a person. Can you take us back? Excuse me. Can you take us back to your childhood? Talk to us about, where did you grow up? What was the situations around there? Maybe talk to us about how did your early experiences shaped your journey and eventually led you to become an entrepreneur and a consultant.
Yeah. I mean, I should point out that, that whole career that I ran through, after being a school teacher briefly, I haven't had a job since. Spent my whole career as freelance and so forth. So I think that independence comes out of a bunch of different factors. One of which, firstly, I grew up in a scientific household. My father, I like to joke about it, but my father really was a rocket scientist, and my son has really done brain surgery. We just don't know what happened to me in the middle generation, but I've always had a scientific bent and interest in technology. When I was very little, my father liked to fix clocks. And when he had one that he couldn't fix, it just wasn't worth the effort. He'd give it to me to let me take it apart. And I was always fascinated about how the pieces interconnected and their different functions and all that. Another part of it is that I went off to boarding school at a very early age. I went to boarding school in 7th grade, which is pretty young. And I think that started my sense of independence and risk taking and being able to, forge my own way, on my own. There was a brief period in there, 9th and 10th grades, when I lived for a year and a half in New Delhi, India. And while I went to the American International School there, I had a lot of exposure in the community. And as I recall, in the school it was about one third Americans, 1/3 Indians, and then 1/3 people from all over the world. And so that gave me, I think, a broader perspective about life, about society, about cultures, about food. And I think that really helped set me on a path of being open to new ideas and other ways of approaching things, of thinking about things. And then I arrived in college and studied biology and got interested in psychology and teaching and education and how I could be a better teacher. Then I taught in the classroom, discovered that I'm a good teacher, but not designed for 45-minute segments.
Mm.
And so what followed was sort of a searching for, how do I fit in? And again, I realized that as a communicator about technology, I've spent my career teaching people about complex things, but it's been through the keyboard, it's been on stage, it's been on the print, so those different modes than just a classroom kind of setting.
Indeed, indeed, and that's how we figure out our own character, isn't it? We need to do the experiments. We need to understand what things work for us, what doesn't, and then potentially just reach to a place where we can add more value to the society. Great. So,
and I also think it helps us to fail.
Mm.
The old saying, doesn't matter how many times you fall down, it's how many you get up, how many times you get up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, I have a much higher risk tolerance than I think a lot of people do. But, especially getting up on stage in front of hundreds of people to talk or do it online. And part of that is you do it and you learn that, you can survive it. Even if it doesn't go well, you're still alive on the other side of it, and you can learn to do it better. And so I've had enough of those experiences of things that haven't panned out the way I intended, and other things that have been great successes. So I think that's an important part of what's shaped my view and how I've approached my professional life.
Perfect. So let's talk about the secret sauce. You've been working with Squad Giants to put people in front of these big publications, and I think I want to split this question into two parts, right? First part is, like, what skills do you think entrepreneurs, founders need to develop to effectively communicate their story, part one? And then once they have that skill set developed, how to get published into large publications?
Sure. So the first thing I'll say is that Sangwoo Ri, who is the head of LG Nova, LG Electronics sort of incubator program for startups, an amazing guy. But he once said in a talk that I was listening to that most founders become great speakers because they have to. You have a limited time in front of your potential investors, your potential customers, your potential supply chain and business partners, and you need to get your point across quickly. And so the problem is that so many founders have a piece of the puzzle. They've solved a piece of the problem, but they don't always have the awareness that there's a lot more that needs to be solved before they're going to have a successful business. The way I love to put it is, build a better mousetrap and the world will be a path to your doorstep. I don't know if that was ever true, but it certainly is not true now. If the world doesn't know about your mousetrap, they're not going to come and buy it. No. So being able to get out in front and tell the story and make your point is important. Now, one thing that's really a big thing that I've seen, among other things, I'm a mentor in the Founder Institute, both in our local chapter here in the Philadelphia area, but also I do a lot of work with the worldwide sort of central office, do presentations for them. So I've heard lots of pitches. I've met lots of founders, and in almost every case, they're very smart people with really good ideas. But one of the big holes that they seem to have is they don't always see the skills that they don't have. And the way I like to put it is, I don't do my own taxes. I've got I've got an accountant who does that for me. I gives that job to somebody else to do. And so, same thing with legal. If I don't write my own contracts, I get a lawyer to help with that. So it's important for founders on a broad scale to realize where you're going to need help, where the things are that you can't do it. It could be marketing, it could be sales, it could be hiring, it could be helping with firing, which is, difficult for anybody, for most people. But one of the key things here is you don't have to be the spokesperson. If you're really not comfortable speaking with people, if that's not a skill that you want to develop, you don't have to. You can bring on a partner and make that part, have them be the front. But it's important that the key thing here is that investors don't invest in companies. They invest in founders.
Yeah.
And that's if that weren't the case, you could just print up an investor deck, and you could send it out and people would send you money. But that's not how it works. You have to pitch. And when you pitch, whether it's on stage or in a boardroom or online, the investors are looking to know more about you. And because they need to trust that you're honest with them, that you're going to be a good business partner with them, but that you know what you're talking about, that you have the commitment to follow through, that you've already thought of a lot of the pieces that are going to be problems and figure out ways to possibly solve them. And so it's one of the interesting things. I've read a lot of the research about online meetings and presentations and especially about pitches and for founders and so forth. And one of the things that's really fascinating to me is that when a potential investor is listening to a pitch, they're focused on a lot of things that are separate from just the facts, just the presentation that you're doing. And the reason for that is they're looking for all those nonverbal communications, right? Tone of voice, body language, posture. Are you confident? Are you nervous? Are you withdrawn? I mean, all those kinds of things that they're looking for. And then one of the problems is when you're like this, and you're not looking at them, you're not making eye contact, you're too close to them and all that, they're not getting a lot of that nonverbal information that they're counting on. And so your pitch could fail just because they're not getting to see you adequately. For me, there are three fundamentals. In order to be successful, and this is in any presentation, whether it's on stage or in a boardroom or online, you need to be seen, you need to be heard, and you need to minimize distractions. Okay. And we've seen this. I mean, you go to almost any conference, and I guarantee you there'll be some session where they've got a big ballroom and the lights are down and the speaker is off at a podium off in the corner, and they've got a big screen going, and you can't see the speaker because they're not in the light. And they probably borrowed the sound system from some airport terminal, and you can't hear what they're saying. There's tables in the back where people are talking behind you, and it's really hard work to listen to somebody and pay attention to what they're saying. And if you have to work too hard to hear them, to see them, and there are distractions going on, you're going to get tired very quickly, and you're going to start checking your email or Instagram.
Go on your phone and start scrolling. Yeah.
And it won't. Your presentation just won't land. And so you need to be intentional about how you come across in your online presentations.
Quickly though, Alfred, do you also help founders to get featured on media outlets, or is this something not into your service?
That's difficult to make happen. Okay. There are some ways, some avenues to do it, but the most important thing I would think for founders to do is to be visible. Okay. Certainly you can submit articles and stuff, but I find it for many, it's going to be easier for them to get quoted in an article. And if you get quoted in a local journal, it might get picked up by somebody bigger, and it'll show up in their searches, and they might, you have a better chance of being seen, being heard. Going to events, if you're going to an industry conference, seek out the press, find out who's covering it, and make the opportunity. The number one rule that has guided my whole career is do whatever you can to make somebody else's job easier. Okay. So if you find out who the press are who are covering the events that you're involved in, look for an opportunity to have a chat with them. Offer to buy them coffee. See if they can give you 10 minutes for you to sit down with them and find out what they write about, see how that might connect to the kinds of things that you're doing. But my focus more is on the 75% of those meetings that you're going to have anyway. Right? Having, getting your name in Forbes or Fast Company or something like that is certainly nice, but it's not going to, the odds of that turning into something productive for your company are very small.
Yeah, the fundamentals of having yourself shown will not change, even though if you have like 10 leads in place.
So if you can get in front of the right people, if you can get in front of the right audience, sign up for all the pitch competitions that are relevant for your field. Get in front, and it it also gives you the opportunity to practice and make your delivery more comfortable and more natural. But I think those are going to be the opportunities that are much more leveraged, much better use of your time, because you're getting in front of the people who, in the same room or on the same virtual conversation, who can connect with you and actually, get you where you want to go.
Definitely. Alfred, can you share a compelling case study that highlights how a founder or an entrepreneur got in touch with you? You helped them out with strategizing or trying to, point out what they have to improvise on. And then based on that improvement, they have achieved some kind of tangible or quantifying success, to help our listeners understand like how you help the founders.
So, a quantifiable answer is a little tough. Okay. Because a lot of times I'm seeing these people early, and we don't have an ongoing relationship. And so I don't necessarily see how it turns out. I'll give you one story about my science teaching that illustrates this. I taught at a school here in Philadelphia when I was first out of college. And about 10 years ago, I went back they were having a reunion day. And so I went back, and at the luncheon, a man came up to me and said, "You may not remember me, but I was in your 7th grade science class. And because of you, I now build satellites for NASA."
There you go.
And so, it's ripples in the pond, and you don't know where those ripples are going to end up. And, it was just a happenstance that I was at that reunion, and that he bothered to show up, and he took the time to find me. Of all the other students I've taught, of all the other founders I've worked with, it's out there, and you don't know. But within that, I know I've worked with a number of founders who, when they started, they weren't thinking about how they appeared, and in just a few short sessions, help them totally change how they came across, and were just visibly more relaxed and more comfortable about how they were presenting, which has to lead to more success. It's not, there's nothing really complicated about the kinds of things that I help people with. Some of them are common sense, but be seen, be heard, minimize distractions. There's, those aren't complicated concepts.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
There's a lot you can do to accomplish that.
I just want to understand that, yes, common sense is not that common. I understand that. That's what my mom always says, that if you have common sense, you're already 50% better than, sorry, you're already better than 50% people on the earth. But it's not that common, isn't it? How does your revenue model work then? What's the, let's say Ash reached out to Alfred today.
Sure.
You're top of the funnel, right? What are the different stages in the funnel? What framework or processes you have in place which take Ash from A to B, and what sort of things you could help Ash with?
Sure. So I've tried a whole lot of things over the years. There was a time when I was giving a free webinar every month about this. Actually, twice, once in the morning so I could get Europe and the UK at a convenient time, and another one in the afternoon so I could get West Coast and stuff. And so I did that for over a year and had minimal success with that. I've tried advertising on LinkedIn. I've tried a whole bunch of different things. And the things that are most effective are those where people get to see me as me. There's a guy who's a consultant who focuses on making more effective meetings, both in person and online, at the corporate level. Guy by the name of Chad Littlefield, and he has a company. His website is called weand.me, me, and he's got a saying that I just keep in mind all the time. It's a really guiding principle for me. But he's always said, connection before content. Okay. Connect with people before you start giving them a bunch of information. You can't just pour information on people and have it stick. You need to give them some way of connecting with you emotionally. And so for me, the kinds of things that have been most successful have been speaking at networking events in person. Podcasts like this have been a very good way to reach out to a broader audience. And then certainly all the mentor kinds of activities I've done with Founder Institute and other groups like that have all been productive ways of getting myself out there, but also raising awareness of the problem. It's really a two-step problem. First, you got to get people to admit that they could probably do better with how they appear. And it's funny because on some of the podcasts, during the course of the conversation, you can see the podcast host changing camera angles and rearranging things to fit some of the things that I've been talking about. But it's the kind of thing where they can get it. First, you need to make them aware of it, and then you can show them little ways that they can make a huge difference. A lot of the things that I recommend for my clients are under $100 or even free. For example, one of the big problems that almost everybody has is not making eye contact when they're online. And the reason for that is your camera's up here, but the picture of the person you're talking to is down here. So you want to look at the person you're talking to, but you're not looking at the camera, so it doesn't look like you're making eye contact. If you and I were to meet at a networking meeting or something like that, and we're sitting here talking and I'm staring at the floor, you're going to think I'm a little weird. Well, the same thing happens online. You just don't come across as authentic, as genuine, if you're not making eye contact. And yet it's hard to learn to look at the camera because we're built, our minds are built to look for faces. One of the first things babies do when they're born is they look for two eyes.
Look at faces, yeah.
They look for faces. So I have a 50-cent solution for that. All you need to do is get some googly eyes and stick them on your web camera, and that'll give you a target to look at.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It makes it so much better, and it helps you pull your eyes up and stay focused on the camera.
Because now the camera is actually the mouth, because the googly eyes are on the top, right?
Yeah.
So you look at the googly eye, but like,
right, it gives you a whole face to look at.
Yeah. That makes sense. I should get some googly eyes, actually.
You should get some googly eyes. So there's that kind of thing, but so in any case, engagement first. You want to connect with people. You want to you want to give them something authentic and real about you that they can relate to before you just start talking at them, because they're going to get bored. They're not going to feel part of it.
Yeah.
Which leads me to one of the key points that I make with my clients and when I'm doing talks like this. One of the most important mistakes that people make when they're putting together a pitch is they think that they have to tell you everything. And that's not the point of your pitch. Especially for investors, you're given what? It depends on the setting, but you might get 3 minutes, you might get 5 minutes. You can't tell the whole story in 5 minutes.
No.
Okay. The goal is not to tell the whole story. The goal is to raise questions in the other person's mind so they want to have a conversation with you and learn more, right? You want to raise questions. You don't want to just give answers. And that's something that a lot of founders don't come to naturally, but it's a really important part of the strategy.
Indeed. And I couldn't agree more with you on this one, because it's like, so many founders just focus on the template, the framework they have been provided to pitch. But that doesn't work, because the first time you go in front of the VC or investor, the objective is not to get the investment. The objective is to get a meeting.
Yeah.
That's the objective. And that's what, confuses.
And it's not, I'd go one step further. It's not just to have a meeting, because that's like, collecting Pokemons. I mean, it's not the meeting that you want. It's the conversation.
Exactly.
That you're going to have with the meeting. And a conversation is an exchange of ideas both ways. Right?
Indeed.
So, but one of the things that I think is important is to engage your audience right from the start. Okay. This is something I learned as a keynote speaker a long time ago. But I see founders making the same mistake over and over again with their online pitches.
Yeah.
For example, if you go to see almost any pitch event, you're going to see a lot of, hello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today. My name's Alfred. I'm the founder of the 75% Solution, and I'm really glad to have the chance to talk to you all today. Already, people are switching off. You've just wasted a minute out of your 5 minutes telling them stuff. They don't care who you are. They don't care what the name of your company is, at least not yet, right? They don't care if you're happy to be here, right? Of course you're happy to be here. You're getting a chance to talk to them. So, just ignore. Oh, and the other one that I hate is starting off with, well, thank you, Mary, for that kind introduction. We all know that was an introduction They said all the things about you so you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
compare that with a pitch that starts off with, this year, 3 out of 4 meetings for all executives are going to happen online.
Mm.
Why would you not want to make the most of those opportunities?
There you go. Suddenly
That's
interest spiked. Nobody's on their phone.
right. What is he talking about? All right. And then I wouldn't even go with it. I'm Alfred Poor. I would just go into the whole problem and what the problem is, or why you have the best solution, or all those kinds of things.
Indeed, definitely. So, Alfred, I'm enjoying this conversation, but the problem is we have a very limited time, and we have one more section to
Okay.
cover. So let's jump into the next section of our podcast, which is the lightning round. We have 6 quickfire questions for you.
Okay.
You can answer them as quickly as you can. If you don't feel answering one of them, just say, I want to skip it, and then we go to the next one. Is that okay?
Got it. Absolutely. Bring it on.
Great. Cool. What are the top 3 strategies for founders to make sure that they appear presentable in front of any meeting in 2025?
So we already did the be seen, be heard, minimize distractions. I will say that within that, having more of your body show is one.
Mm.
Having lighting being good and not relying on a window, because it's not always going to be good light coming in your window, is 2. And then having a good microphone that sounds good. A lot of people go with headphones with a little boom mic, and it sounds like the airline pilot reporting from the cockpit. It's just terrible sound quality. So pay attention to those 3 things, and you're going to be a big step ahead.
Great. By the way, my mic is okay, right?
Your mic is great. You've got very good sound quality.
Great. What book would you recommend to our audience, and why?
I don't recommend books for the most part, because they're wrong by the time they hit print. This is somebody who's written 15 books. I'm the author or co-author of over 15 books. For this kind of information, I mean, there are all kinds of inspiring kinds of books to think about. Seth Godin, you can't go wrong with any of his stuff. But I would focus more on the specific problem. And YouTube is a great source of inspiration. LinkedIn has all kinds of great things that people publish on it. So yeah, and podcasts like yours can be a great way to find specific help, specific advice in a condensed way. It's going to get you there faster. So no book.
Great stuff. What one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Flexibility, resilience.
Resilience, yeah.
Not believing that you have all the answers, and being ready to pivot or bring in other resources or do whatever it takes to get it done, and not have your ego so invested in everything that you can't let go.
Definitely. What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
This one's really strange. So I don't have that much trouble organizing my time and my to-do list and stuff. My biggest problem has been not giving myself credit for what I've accomplished. I sit there and say, oh, I've got all this to do. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. And sort of have that sort of dissociated feeling of, what have I accomplished? So about a year ago, I got a giant whiteboard and divided it up into 2 weeks, 10 days. And every day, as I complete a task, I'd take a little Post-it and I put it under that day. And at the end of the 2 weeks, when it's time for the next week, I'd take all the Post-its off for a week. And one, it shows me things where I might have forgotten that need to be followed up on. But I put them in a box. And I have this huge box filled with things that I've accomplished. Wow. And for me, it helps me give myself credit for the things I've done and not just focus on the things that are undone.
Like a Kanban board.
It's a reverse Canva board.
Okay.
Right. I mean, well, Canva board does have the column of completed tasks, but it's like a board that's just completed tasks.
Just completed that. Got it. Got it. What's a new or a crazy business idea would like to pursue if you had time and money and all the resources in the world?
Well, I'm closing in on retirement, and I've actually my wife is a potter, so I have a lot of experience with craft shows and stuff, and I've actually got a bunch of crafts that I would like to do as a retirement project. Particularly, I'm interested in automata, little handmade machines that you turn a crank and something happens, and I'm fascinated by those, and we'll probably try to figure out some way to make that at least a cost zero project.
Yeah,
by the time I'm done.
That sounds good. And last but not least, what's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Oh, there are a bunch of them. I acted on stage with the late William Hurt, Bill Hurt, movie star. We were in high school together, and actually, for one play, I got a better review than he did.
Really?
Now, to his credit, even then, everybody in the entire school knew that he had more acting ability in his little finger than the rest of us combined. He was genius, and it was pleasure to know him. But between that and the year and a half in India, I mean, those are two of the things that are a little outside the norm. What you might expect.
Definitely. Alfred, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story, unpacking your past, how did you came up with the idea and business, etc. If people want to check out your services or just have a conversation with you, what's the best way to do it?
So well, one of the things I learned a long time ago is you want to have multiple entry points for people, because different people are going to want to come at it from different ways. Three of the best ways are: one, you can go to my website, and it's the 75%.com. So THE and then the digits 75 and then percent.com, the 75%.com. And then you can find out more about how I help executives of all stripes, but especially founders. You can also email me at alfred@alfredpoor.com. Makes it nice and simple. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn as Alfred Poor, so I'm easy to find there. And then the third way is if you want to just schedule it. We talked about funnels, but didn't get that far in it. But one of the things that I do is I always give people a free 30-minute consultation, learn about them, give them some advice, show them, basically give them some practical things that they can use right away. So I encourage anybody who wants to do that, just go to the website, bookachatwithalfred.com, bookachatwithalfred.com. And I encourage you to let me know in the comment section, that you heard the Founders podcast, and as a result of that, you would like to have a conversation with me. We'll do conversation, and then we'll have some content.
Definitely. Well, Alfred, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing through your 75% solution. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, and I, again, thank you for the opportunity, and hope your listeners will find some of this helpful.
Thank you.